Hello, it is good to see you. Back to my traditional format. It is April 4th, and it is episode 94, if you can believe it, of Three Things with Ian. Back in the downstairs studio, back from my vacation with family, and it was great. I really enjoyed it. A lot of walking, a lot of sightseeing, mostly good weather, and just some great memories. Some core memories were created, and that's what it's all about, right? Sometimes I think it's just important to take yourself and put yourself in a different situation, new environment, new people. The atmosphere is different. Your day-to-day is different. You're seeing things, experiencing things, everything from the mundane to the sublime. I think it's just sometimes good to get out and experience something. So we experienced Washington, D.C., stayed at a really nice Airbnb, ate some good food, had some good laughs, learned some things. Bizarro land as it was. I'll look back on this and say I was in DC 2025 during what I hope to be a blip in the momentary history of this great country. So let's get to my episode. Today is going to be, because I'm getting back, feeling a little bit tired, going to do my entire episode on Amtrak. All three topics will be kind of just be me just talking. Have a little diatribe, a little tirade, not really a tirade planned for you, but so let's just start. Amtrak. It's a portmanteau. Who doesn't love portmanteau? America and track. Amtrak. Let's back up a second though. I was this old when I discovered that tater tot is actually short for potato toddler. So yeah, I just had to put that in there. It's more than a catchy phrase. Tater tot is literally short for potato toddler. Okay, so back to your regular scheduled programming. So think back to 1916, if you can. A few of us are still remembering those days. But 98% of all commercial intercity travelers moved by rail, right? So we've come a long way from 98%. You may ask what the other 2% did. Well, they used inland waterways. 42 million people use railways as their primary transportation mode. It's changed a lot, obviously. Competition is fierce. Buses, maybe not from buses, but air travel and car, right? So Amtrak is kind of a throwback. So I did a little bit of research before I dive into my experience with it. Amtrak is pretty old, founded in 1971. It's one of those quasi-public private corporations. Technically, it receives money currently. Who knows about tomorrow? State and federal subsidies, but it's managed as a for-profit. Headquarters is basically where we were, one block west of Union Station, Washington, D.C. The network is large. We live in a large country. This makes sense. 500 stations, 21,000 miles of track. But here's the big but. It only owns 623 miles of it. The remaining mileage is basically shared. They're owned by other rail lines, owned by different companies. I once famously made the joke that no one builds railroads anymore, so buy railroad stock. They're not going anywhere. It's very expensive to build new railways. There's been 1,001 plans for expansion from Amtrak and other things. There's a new railway in Florida that I think is doing quite well. But in general, most of the 21,000 miles of track have long since predated Amtrak, and they travel at the behest of those lines, right? So they have to slow down. I'll talk about this later, but they have to slow down. They have to yield to freight cars and all kinds of stuff, and it definitely changes your experience. According to Wikipedia, most track speeds are 79 miles per hour or less. I do not feel like I was going that fast today, but anyway, the Northeast Corridor with the Excella, you have something more akin to it's not the bullet train, but it's 160 mile per hour speed. In 2022, Amtrak served 22.9 million passengers. It had $2.1 billion in revenue. Nearly 87,000 passengers ride more than 300 Amtrak trains, mostly late, daily. Nearly two-thirds, though, of passengers come from the 10 largest metropolitan lines, and 85% of passengers travel on routes shorter than 400 miles. So if you're calculating that speed, that's a 3 to 4 hour, maybe up to 5 hour ride is your average. So before I dive into it, the question that I proposed to myself is traveling on Amtrak a good value proposition? I will get into more details, but if time is valuable to you, the answer is no. But if you want an experience or an adventure and simply not travel to a destination, there is some appeal. So let's get to the pros of Amtrak. And there are many pros. I guess you might know this, but I went from South Bend, Indiana to Washington, D.C. It's scheduled on both ends to be an overnight route, so a little bit of daytime, a little bit of sleeping. You wake up and you're at your destination. That's the general premise. So I got to experience 13, 14 hours in this train both ways, so I have a good sense of it. Legroom. You have a lot of legroom. You have as much as you would in a business premium first class situation on a plane. You have your chair can not recline completely back, but it goes back very, very far, much further than you'd think. You have not only a footrest that pops down, but you have a sort of leg extender that kind of goes under the thighs and the upper legs and kind of just extends the seat. So in general, you have a lot of space. You have a lot of leg room. You have a storage compartment like you would on a plane. You can bring a lot of bags. There's no TSA, amazingly. You're able to bring a lot more material. A lot of people bring multiple luggages, pillows, blankets, the whole 9 yards. You have a lot of upper space because there's no turbulence and there's less big movement. There's the big racks up top above your seat where you can store a lot of material. They don't have to latch, and so there's much more. They can expand and take in a much more larger bag. So space in general is a pro. You don't feel cramped. They don't squeeze in a lot of people. The profit margin and the way that they calculate and give you, and essentially the space is just bigger. The scales of economy have just changed dramatically. These train cars are not fitting in a ton of people, so you can get up. You have a lot more arm room, leg room. Room in general is a pro, right? I mean, not having TSA is not scary per se, but it may feel less secure. But there are no long lines for security. There's not the rigmarole. There's not the pat downs. There's not the put up your arms and have that machine. Look at what you got on your body. So you can bring on snacks. If you have a roomette, which I didn't do that. I did a coach seat. You can bring in your own alcohol, but you can bring in snacks, things like that. Scenic ? I saw some West Virginia. I saw some Maryland. The windows are really dirty. I've heard this complaint on a lot of the less than premier cars, like the ones that go to California or Colorado. Those are going to have, I suppose, cleaner windows. So it's scenic in that you're kind of just you're just on the train. You're moving, I guess, 70 miles an hour, and you can see out the window. You're facing the direction of the movement, which is nice. So it's not very it's not very nausea-inducing. It's pretty comfortable. The ride is bouncy. You're jaunting back and forth a little bit. That when you go over different tracks and you move and you pivot. I would not say that it is akin to turbulence per se. It is a much different bouncing around, jostling. It can be a little slight and a little bit, I guess, jarring, but in general, it's kind of just the lulling of the motion back and forth. I felt very safe in terms of the car adhering to the track itself. So those are some of the pros. I mean, people talk about meeting, people are more talkative. It's a different clientele. It's a different clientele without diving into too many stereotypes. It skews a bit older, a little bit, not so much friendly, but there's an idea that you're more open to conversation and not everyone's just on their laptops and their headphones. It's a little bit more of an open atmosphere. You can kind of pivot your chair and kind of talk to your neighbor across the way. So those are all pros. The price obviously it's cheaper than flying, but it's not going to compete with driving your car full of your family as well, right? It's right there in the middle. So it's a much less expensive ticket, but it's also not going to be as cheap as just plain driving. The cons, the speed. You cannot compete with a 550 mile per hour airplane. You cannot compete with. You're going highway speed generally. You slow down for a lot of things. Think of how many times you hear trains whistling and doing their siren when they go through intersections, right? I'm hearing that for 14 hours. It does go to areas that are less populated, but if you're in an area where there's a corridor of people and residential things and businesses and offices and roads, you are slowing down. You are hearing that sort of at the end was kind of a jarring, like that the caution bell going off constantly when you got to people and areas of population kind of got a little bit annoying. But so your max speed is decent when you're chugging along, but you do a lot of slowdowns and stopping. It's like driving in a car on the highway. It's much more like 80 mile per hour cruise control. You're just going. On a train, you hit 80, but then you slow down at 55, right? So it's kind of a lot of bump, ba-dump, ba-dump. Delays, Amtrak is not run like in Japan where they apologize when they're 1 minute late. There's so many opportunities to do stops. They incorporate a few smoke breaks where you can switch your legs. There's just so many opportunities to pick up delays. The train coming back South Bend was 3 hours delayed, which was kind of a lot. I think if I can speak openly and objectively, I think from what I've heard through the grapevine and researching Amtrak, 45 minutes to 90 minutes on the longer routes, they're going to accumulate that kind of delay. It is not a direct form of transportation. It's point to point, but there's so many stops. There's so many opportunities for slowdowns, things like that. Overall, I think that I would give it a fairly good review. I do think that the bathrooms were pretty well maintained. Obviously, when there's people on these trains for so long, Chicago to Miami is the entirety of the route. That's a 48-hour slog, and most of the people are in coach. Now, the chairs do recline, like I said, a lot, but you're not on a flat bed or anything like that. So, if you're on a train for 2 days, it's going to be a little smelly. There's some bathroom issues. And generally, on the train going down, the guy was vacuuming constantly, coming around picking up trash, similar to an airplane. I would say that the flight attendant equivalent is just about there on trains. There is a beverage, there's a snack car, and there's a formal dining car as well. So there's a few more. You can get a formal sit down meal if you want. We didn't participate in that, but we just brought a lot of food with us. Amtrak's all about the journey. It's about the journey. If that's your thing, maybe it's cool. I'm glad I tried it. I don't have any regrets. I learned a lot. It generally was what I thought it was going to be. It's slower. There's a lot of stops. Just when you're kind of cruising along, you end up getting to another city where you kind of have another pause. So it's ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. It's kind of, in my head, that's kind of the sound and the feeling. So anyway, I gave you a little history on Amtrak. I gave you my general experience. Like I said, I went South Bend, Indiana to Washington, D.C. It's about a 13 or 14-hour bus ride. It would be about 10 hours in the car. And flying, in the air, it would have been a 2-hour flight. But it's definitely hard to compare to air travel, but I'm glad I did it. Would I do it every time? No. Would I prefer a 3 to 4 hour journey? Probably. Sleeping was not difficult per se. It was hard to get quality sleep, but I did nod off and the time did go. I read my Kindle, listened to some podcasts. It was pleasant. I did a lot of eavesdropping on my neighbors' conversations. That was kind of fun too. Overall, I would enjoy it. I would like to track the train I took was the Floridian, and I want to track it for maybe a week or two and see how many times generally it's off track. I don't think it's ever going to be totally on time. I think your delays are going to be far-ranging. I think with weather and traffic and sharing the rails, a lot of things can happen. Once you're in the air flying, it's much more direct. But maybe it's not as pleasant. Maybe it's more perfunctory and this is more of an adventure. I don't know. Those are just some thoughts on it. Episode 94 in the books. Back to my regularly normal scheduled programming. I made a list of some new topics to discuss. I'm excited. Thank you for watching the YouTube shorts. That was also an adventure in and of itself. I will see you guys tomorrow, and Godspeed. Bye-bye.